Thank you, Dave, and thank you to Edison and Dave. Thank you, Edison. Did you want to go? You want to say anything first? You okay? All right, that's fine. I want to thank Edison for letting me come here. He's been very kind in the past. Some of you, I think I see a couple of people that I know that have that I've seen here before, and welcome to all the people that are new. I've had various different, my background is I used to be an attorney. I still am an attorney. I don't practice law anymore. My area of law was bankruptcy. And on your table I've got 3 different brochures for you, or 3 different things. And one of the new things that we're offering basically is how to use public stock to borrow against public stock, and that's this folder. So if you have public stock, it's basically a illiquid asset, and we help you convert it to liquidity without selling it, so you don't have tax consequences and so on. So that's what, this is one of the things that we do. I have been involved, just to give you a little bit of a background so you guys get an idea. About 5 years ago, I started getting involved in the cannabis business when nobody was in it and everybody laughed. Now they say, oh, isn't that great? So I took 5 companies public in the cannabis sector. And from there, when we started figuring out how to do it, and how I got into the lending business is that I had a piece of paper. This was the first deal I ever did, and if anybody's into stocks, I can give them the stock symbol. The stock had gone up so much that I had a piece of paper in my hand that was only worth $13.5 million. So, and I didn't want to sell it. All I wanted to do was borrow against it. So I searched the world to try to figure out how to borrow against that paper, and that's how I got into this business. I did not physically get into the lending business till only about a couple of years ago, but before that I was very deeply involved in the marijuana business. We've taken several companies public. The last one that I did was a hemp company, a hemp and CBD. And that's not what I'm here to tell you. I just want to give you my background. And from there, we have graduated to getting into, we basically become lenders. So what does that mean? And this chart shows the 5 types of products that we have available. This basically says the first column, and you can take these home. The first column has to do with stock loans, and it gives a little bit of information on how stock loans work and so on. The second column is equity lending. So let's say somebody has a company that they want to either that they want to launch, and they've got an idea, and if the idea is the greatest thing since sliced bread, whatever it is, we will help you either mold it, or if you're already established, we can take you public, or if you're looking for equity investments, we can help in that arena. So that's the second column of what we do. The third column is that basically we will do financing on almost any property in the United States and most of the Caribbean, also in some parts of South America and Central America and Europe. So if you have a property that you're buying, but you need the financing for it, we can help you with it. In many cases, we're direct lenders. In many cases, we know we're direct with the lenders. So instead of dealing with, and I apologize, and I don't mean it in any way, is that you're dealing directly is what you're dealing with. The reason I'm here, let's go to the 4th column. The 4th column is basically what this gentleman does, which is unsecured loans. So we can do unsecured loans, we can get lines of credit and so on, and it all depends upon what the score of the person is, if it's a corporate loan or a personal loan and so on. We've gotten into that business because of the fact that every time we do a stock loan or we do any other kind of loan, if it's a company specifically, they're looking to get lines of credit, so we offer that as a service. And the 5th column that is there is on what I used to do and have started doing again, because bankruptcies are starting to go up again, is that I teach a course on how to buy property from bankruptcy court. And this is a very specific course. That's this piece of paper. That's not what I'm here to tell you about, but if somebody's interested, they can call me and I can explain how that works. It's a very, very, very tiny niche. So who here has bid at foreclosure auctions? Great. If you're bidding at a foreclosure auction and a property goes off into bankruptcy, what would you do? What would you generally do? Anybody? Most people say, okay, it's gone. I can't go after it, and they go on to the next one that's coming up for auction, especially if you're bidding at a foreclosure auction. Where everybody stops, that's what this is all about. We start where everybody stops, because we only go after properties that have gone into bankruptcy. I've only bought maybe 400 or 500 of these. In the old days, we used to buy one a day, sometimes two a day. And I would flip them all. I didn't keep any of them. That was my folly, because I was still busy as a lawyer, and I was also involved in the cannabis business, and at that time, the cannabis was making a couple of dollars more than the real estate was. So, but what's interesting about this business is this is an evergreen business. I'm talking about bankruptcies, and it applies anywhere in the United States. You said you started in California. It applies in California. It applies in any state that has a bankruptcy court, and all states have bankruptcy court, including Puerto Rico, which is not a state, but it's a territory. Guam, I mean, anywhere. It works anywhere there's a bankruptcy court. And what is also happening with this is that it's now becoming more and more popular, because other countries have adopted American bankruptcy laws. And like Dubai, just 2 years ago, I'm just using it as a reference, 2 years ago came up with the laws that copy America. So the properties in Dubai are now coming into bankruptcy. So we have a couple of people who live there, and that's what they do. They've learned on how to do this from me. So what I'm trying to make is that this is a universal thing, and it's if there's anybody that's interested, I can talk to you about it privately, or I can go into it. I do have a gentleman who's with me. His name is Larry Isaacson. He'll speak in a few minutes in the real estate end of it. His thing is, he has two specialties. One is got to do with real estate, and the other one has to do with helping companies when they need different types of capital. Any questions so far before I delve a little bit more into this portion? Yes, Edison?
So, do you think the bankruptcy system, is that still working?
Yes, and the reason I've even brought it up is that just in the last 3 months, it started, not 3 months, about 6 months, it started showing uptick. So, you do your bus tour if you want. Let me know next time, and I'll give you a couple of properties that we bought in bankruptcy, and you can make that part of your tour. In fact, as soon as I'm finished here, I'm looking at a property in Coral Springs that was in bankruptcy. It's only worth about between $400,000 and $500,000. Take a wild guess how much I'm paying for it. It does have a mortgage on it. Any numbers? Anybody here want to guess?
100.
2,000. I paid $2,000 for it. It rents for about $2,000, so I hope to have it before I start negotiating for about 24 months. So I'm only going to collect about $48,000, I hope, from it before I have to start dealing with the mortgage company. So this happens every day. In the old days, I used to pay $500, or whoever said $100, that's what I used to pay, or no money. And now I have to pay a little bit. I should have kept my mouth shut. I started with 1,000, but I went up to 2,000. And the gentleman who owns it filed a bankruptcy and has walked away from it. He owns another house, and he's just giving it up. And I've only done that about 60 to 80 times with single-family homes. With multiple properties, we've done it a lot more. The largest deal I ever did was 253 houses that I bought in bankruptcy. I'd like anybody to guess how much per door that I paid for it. Per door. They were all owned free and clear. They were in bankruptcy. There was 253 of them. This was during the Madoff times, and so he was actually the guy who had it was involved in a Ponzi scheme, but he used to take advantage of big companies, insurance companies. He never took any money from individuals. But because of Madoff, he never got any publicity, and he had to end up in bankruptcy. He had about 1,000 houses that he owned all free and clear. The last 253 I bought. It was in Broward County. Yeah, it was in Broward County. The bankruptcy was in Broward County. The properties were all the way from, somebody said Jacksonville, all the way from Jacksonville to upstate New York. I paid $350 or $350,000, which? Per door.
500 per door, maybe.
Yeah, I was gonna say. We actually paid, I think it was $250, about $2,000 a door, $1,500 a door, give or take, $1,500 to $1,800. I have to do the math and I have to look at it. And before closing, this was in Broward County, and some other day I'll tell you the story about it, but Edison brought it up, so I'm just gonna give you this end of it, the cash end of it. Before closing, we sold 109 of them. By the way, these were all bought on sight unseen, because I just found out about the auction a week before the auction was held. This is about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, so this is not like a long time ago. About 3 years ago, I'd have to look at the dates. And I sold 109 of them before closing. We sold them for $5,000 per unit. Almost all of the money that was needed for us to come up with, to close on the deal came out of the pre-sale. So it was a simultaneous sale. It was not done illegally. The money was just wired in and it was sold just before closing. So that's the type of stuff you can go from a El Cheapo, I apologize for using El Cheapo, small Century Village apartment that's been in bankruptcy, and you'll pick it up sometimes for $1,000, $1,500, a very tiny number, all the way up to the last house that one of my students bought, and whoever's interested, I can send you her video. She paid $0 for the house to take it over. It was only, you can put that on your bus tour, by the way. And it might be empty. If it is, then they can get a tour of it. It's only 6 bedrooms. She's got it on the market right now for $1.2 million. She paid $0 for me, to me. It was part of the course that I had given her that house. She managed, and that's part of what we teach, she managed to convince the bank to take $750,000. She spent $1,637 fixing it. A hard money lender who comes, I don't think I've seen him here, but at each sheet that I'd introduced her to, put up all the money. She put nothing out of her pocket, basically. The only money she put up from her pocket was my course. And hard money lender gave her $750,000 to pay it off. She only collected about $90,000 in rent over the 3 years that she's had it. So that's the kind of stuff that can be done, is done every day. The bankruptcy court secrets, this business is a get rich slow. And the reason for that is that it's one of the best sources of business. You know, the hardest thing in this business is to get hold of a property, and whoever said, I think Dave, you said it is that something to do with act on it. Yeah. Can't steal in slow motion. So he's 100% right, is that the biggest thing with them is go tie them up and then figure out what the hell to do with it. Excuse my language, what to do with it. But tying it up is the most important thing, is to tie it up, and then, okay, then you come to RIAs like this, you call people like Edison and say, hey, okay, I got this, now what do I do? And I'm sure he'll have a solution, and so there's other people like that also. So this is a course that the reason I even brought it up is that it's starting to get popular again. And again, meaning I haven't taught it in about 3 years, but I'm now starting to teach it again. As I'm starting to get people who are buying, and I'm also starting to get properties. All the seeds that I had sown, my students and other people will send me deals, and it's now starting to happen again. So that's one of the other reasons that I'm here. Most of this is handled by somebody in my office. What we've done is, over the years, is that I've put together a small team of people who basically bring deals, and the other reason that I'm here is that I get what's the word? I get deals offered to me every day, and they range from small properties all the way up to 50, 60, 80 million dollar businesses that are looking for money, cannabis businesses. And I don't know if you realize how big that cannabis business has become. You just have to be very careful of how you do it. And if you figure it out, it's one of the most profitable things that you'll ever do. But the difference between cannabis and property is the cannabis is a fad of some sort, meaning it's just gonna either go away or whatever. But the property always remains. So property and financing. So those are the two combinations. What we do is we finance properties, we'll finance them anywhere in the world, we'll also finance businesses. And the main reason I'm here is to talk about how, if you have public stock, and let's say you don't, but somebody else that you know, you can borrow against your public stock to buy property or to buy anything else that you want with it. Any questions? I know I started off on this thing, but I'll talk about any of the three that anybody has. Anybody has questions so far? Yes, sir.
What's the interest rate?
On the stock loans,
Right.
3%, starts at 3.
And what percentage, what's the loan to value?
Loan to value, anywhere from, depending on the liquidity of the stock, anywhere from about 60% down. If it's really liquid, the highest I've ever done is 88% loan to value. So it just depends on the liquidity and of the stock. But interest rate starts at about 3%, sorry.
Does the stock collateral transaction qualify for the exchange, the new exchange under the tax laws?
I have absolutely no idea. Don't know. I don't know anything about the new. What is the new law, by the way? Why don't you educate us?
Well, I don't know a lot about it. My wife's a CPA, though, and she has clients that are doing it. But basically, you can sell stock and do a 1031 type exchange. You use the money to invest in real estate and defer your capital gains.
For like 25 years or
Yeah.
something. Somebody just called me on it actually yesterday,
Yeah.
and said, have you heard of this? That they've come up with some sort of an exchange where capital gains are deferred for 25 years. And I said, nope. I don't know anything about it. That's great. Yes. Yes, please do. I don't.
One of the questions is that you don't sell the stock. You only place
In
it.
this case, yeah.
In this case, yeah, but yeah, correct.
So that's the difference, that
Yeah.
there is no vote.
But if your money from the stock is in a property and the stock tanks, you have a sell point at some point.
Yes. So I'll answer your question. It's a great point that he brought up. I never answered your question. I don't know anything about the 25 years because I believe it's brand new. But what I do know is that in our situations, there is no capital gains because you're borrowing against the stock. Thank you for bringing that up. You're borrowing against the stock, so there is no capital gains. Whatever happens with the real estate, that's a different thing. But on our side, it's you're borrowing against the equity in the stock.
But you have a
It's like
sell order if it drops, right? So
Yes, the default provisions are very interesting. What happens is that if the liquidity goes down, there's a default, not a default, it's called a top off. If the price goes down, there's a top off, or you can walk away. By the way, these are all non-recourse loans. So if the price drops, you walk away from it. There's no recourse. Yes. Does everybody know what recourse and non-recourse is? I know the sophisticated, the people who do this understand, but if you don't, just ask, please.
Yes, I don't know.
Okay. Let me answer a question, then whoever you were asking, sorry. Recourse means that if the property drops in value, you'll be liable for the difference. Okay. Yeah, under homestead and bankruptcy laws, you don't have to, you're going too deep. Basically, recourse means that it's no personal liability, non-recourse, did I say that right? Sorry, the other way around. Non-recourse is no personal liability. Recourse is when, let's say you buy a property for 100, you borrow 100, and the price drops to 50. If it's foreclosed and it's sold off, you'd be liable for the other 50. So the loans that we do in public stock is all non-recourse loans. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. You had a question. Somebody had a
yes. So I see it says design like an equity line of credit.
Yes.
Credit against the stock. So does that mean you'd be able to go through the application process, take it out into a line to access it whenever you need?
Yes. Yes,
Definitely
yes,
houseflipper.
absolutely, yeah. It's really it's interesting the way it's set up. It's the only limitations of that may be an issue is that the minimum loan amount is $100,000. So if you have a small amount, we can, there's other ways of taking care of it, but not loans. Most of the lenders will go at 250 or more. And the lines of credit are basically set up for companies that, they'll have a $20 million or a $5 million line of credit and they just withdraw against it. Yes.
Are there points up front?
Only the origination points, yes. Sometimes we can do a loan without points if the liquidity of the stock is there.
And
It just depends.
What's the points?
As much as I can get. Whatever the market will bear. Meaning, we typically ask for 5. I've done it as low as 1. And so the range is, it just depends. It depends on deal to deal to deal. Any other questions?
Quick question, I was just
Yes, sir.
trying to wrap my head around these deals. For
Yes.
example, if someone got a property for $1 million and
Mhm.
walked away from it, I'm just trying to see how you come and offer that lending institution 100,000.
We don't. You never buy it for 100. You'll buy it for about 70 or 80% of loan to value.
Okay.
You'll never buy it for 10%. It does happen in bankruptcy court though. So you're mixing a little bit of apples and oranges, but that's okay.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. In bankruptcy court, you can get a property free and clear of all liens for as much as the bid is. So I do have students who bought property in Georgia and they just happened to be in court. There was nobody else in the courtroom except these 2 people and they ended up buying the property for about 4 cents on the dollar, free and clear. They still own it, and they're collecting rent on it and so on because of the fact that it was an auction held in bankruptcy court. So to answer your question, the properties that we bought, the 253, they didn't have any liens. So they were all owned free and clear. We just happened to be the only one bidding. Actually, there was 3 other people, but they were just there just to try to test the waters. So we ended up winning that bid. But it does happen in bankruptcy court. It is done every day. And it's not just property. There's cars that are sold. There was one gentleman who took my course about 5 years ago, and he recovered he paid me a lot of money to teach him, but he only wanted to buy 5 things. Cars, guns, jewelry, watches, and there was one other person, meaning he didn't want real estate. All he wanted was the stuff that could easily be sold. So the guns he'd buy for $20 or $50 from and go and sell it at the gun shows. He wasn't even licensed as a dealer. And that's all he did, but he bought cars, guns, the 4 or 5 things. There's stuff that he could get rid of quickly. I just don't remember what the 5th thing was.
I had a question about the European lending. So like
Yes.
France or Spain, do you collateralize the loan with the property there, or do you use property here in the United States?
Both.
of America?
We can do it either way. Doesn't make any difference.
And what's the LTV and how's it secured?
A great question, and you would ask the same question on the LTV. Everything we do is bespoke. If you know what bespoke means, it's custom made. Bespoke is usually with clothes. They say, oh, this is a bespoke suit, or meaning it's a tailor-made. So to answer your question, everything we do is tailor-made or to suit the facts. We're not the typical lender that does one size fits all. There is no such thing in my business. If it is, we can't compete with the big banks who will give you loans for a house for 4%. Now we can on stock loans, we beat them every day, but it's a different animal. Any other questions? I have 2 people on my team that are also here. One is Larry. He'll talk about the real estate end of it and a few other little things. He'll give you his background. And then I have Robert Houston. Robert is an expert in credit repair, and also he is one of my students in the bankruptcy court secrets. And his first deal he's hopefully going to be doing today in the bankruptcy arena. As long as he brought the cash to pay the gentleman who's selling this house for $2,000.
Are those bids online or?
No, Nothing is online.
So you have
This
to be
is
in the court.
negative. It's done by, it's a very tiny niche. The business market is very niche. So it starts with finding the deals online, and then from there, remember what I said, if you're bidding on a foreclosure sale, it says property withdrawn or sale withdrawn because of bankruptcy. That's where we start. So we actually end up buying it. To answer your question, about 70% of the deals are not online, 30% are. They're actually not online, they're offered. Bankruptcy court it's a very it's a very closed system. If you don't understand it, and if you're not an insider, you'll never understand how it's done. And even if you're an insider, you're not about to teach anybody. I'm the only one in the United States that ever has taught. There was somebody who taught the course about 30 or 40 years ago. Since then, I have never seen it being taught. Nobody teaches what I teach.
You have to be in court to bid.
Negative. No, it's all over the place. We give you all the sources as part of our course. We give you all the sources. But to answer your question, not all of them, but the answer is yes. On the ones that say, all the bidding instructions are always put online. So you have information about it, and whatever it says, you have to follow it line by line by line by line. So since you brought that up, I can tell you a quick story. How much time do we have? How much time do we have? Okay. Over or under? I'll tell you a very quick story. Remember I was telling you about the 253 houses that I bought? So if you read in the fine print, it said you must bring a check for, I think it was $100,000, cashier's check. And you must do this, all of the things. So I walk into a hall, it was about this size, a little bit bigger, and there's nobody there. And I thought I was at the wrong place. The only person that was there was the auctioneer, telephone, a court reporter, because everything is recorded in bankruptcy court, a court reporter, and the attorney who was doing the auction. So I walked in and I said, am I at the wrong place? There was nobody there. So I was introduced because the attorney knew me, the attorney that was selling it, he knew who I was, so he introduced me to the auctioneer. So the auctioneer says, and I was there with my client. We were buying it jointly. At that moment, I just didn't have enough money to be able to do this on my own because I had no idea how much the property would go for. There was something called a stalking horse bidder. I don't know if you know what stalking horse bidder is. So the stalking horse bid was $350. What that means is that if nobody bids on it, he gets it for $350. The 253 houses. So the stalking horse bid was $350 or $2. I don't remember the exact number. So we had to have a cashier's check for that $250 or $350. I did not have that much money at that time because I had that much, but I didn't know how much higher it would go. That I didn't have. So I'd taken on a partner, and so he was going to bring the $350. We walk in, I'm introduced to the auctioneer, and the auctioneer says, hi, how are you? He says, do you have the $350,000 check? And I look at my partner and said, did you bring it? He was supposed to bring it. He says, no, I forgot it on the table. And so the auctioneer says, there's the door, you can leave. I said, wait. I said, let me talk to the attorney. So I started talking to the attorney, and I said, this is what's happened. He says, I have no control, I have to call the trustee. So the trustee, I talked to the trustee. Oh, by the way, there was also a 3% commission due on it, meaning if you were a real estate broker, but you also have to register, which I didn't. I didn't register. I am a real estate broker also, but I didn't register that if I win the bid, I get 3%. So I got on the phone with the trustee and I said, I'm really sorry, my partner effed up, and is there anything you can do? She says, and I said, oh yeah, I also forgot to register. She says, all right. She says, take me back into the room. So she was on the phone. She gets on the phone. She tells her court reporter to put it on the record. And she says, I've known Manny Singh for 25 years. If he says he has the money, I'm waiving that right to have the $350,000 or whatever that number was. Oh, and by the way, he's also a real estate broker. If he wins the bid, he gets 2%. And the auctioneer was so pissed off because he had two people on the phone that were bidding. I don't know about they were his people, but he would have gotten all the commission. And one of them was. So I got in as a squeaker. But to answer your question, it's all laid out. And if you don't fit the terms, you don't get it. This just happened to be because she knew who I was. So that's how I squeaked that in. and I did make 3% off of it, and we did buy it for, it started off at $350, that's the stalking horse bid, meaning that was the minimum, so it started at $350 or $250, whatever it was, escalated really fast. There was 2 people on the phone and myself. Started at $350 or whatever the number was, escalated by 50, and then one of them dropped off, and the second guy dropped off at about 700. I think we got it for 750 or 850. I just don't remember the number. Does that answer your question? It's a
Yes.
long way of answering your
So
question.
typically you gotta be there.
This was an auction not in court. It was outside. It was publicized. It was publicized. It was advertised in the newspaper, but nobody showed up. And the reason was it was just 253. It was a lot of money, and it said there you must bring a cashier's check for 350. Now I have been to for bankruptcy auctions. What's weird is a few weeks later there was another auction of a property on Gold. I think it was Gold Ocean. I can't remember, a condo. Guess what? There's 200 people there. It was just a little condo, but there was 200 people, and everybody was bidding. The guy who bid he was buying it for a friend of his who wanted to retire and come down, and they overpaid for the property. On ours, we underpaid by quite a bit. In this case, they paid market price for it. So it just depends. Each one is different. There's no one set pattern. And but it's all online. The information's all online.
Instructions
You just
online.
don't know you just need to know where to look for it. Most people don't know where to look for it. Any other questions? Yes.
You say you're teaching a course.
Yes.
And then could you
Yes.
give us some information on that?
Sure. If you'll give me a number, this is the maximum information I got. It's not a physical course where we teach you. It's a hands-on course, meaning I teach it not online, not in face-to-face. We do, but we do it one-to-one is how I teach it. And the reason for the one-to-one is that this is a very tiny niche. And if I teach it in a class, we have done it in classes, but normally I just don't. I just teach it one-to-one, and it's done with a hands-on, meaning if I was to start teaching you the course now, you basically start chasing properties within a few seconds after you finish. Not hours, or not go looking for stuff, because everything you need, and that gentleman, wherever he went, that gentleman, he was at my house for 15 minutes, and he's already got his first property. Meaning that's how quick it is. It's very, 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 very fast. The leads are very fast. You then have to follow through with them, and then you get them. Any other questions?
So how long is this class going to be?
It's up to you, meaning we don't teach it as a class. It's taught one-to-one. So how we do it is we give you all the basics, and then you spend some time with me, usually an hour or 2 hours, and then you go to work. It's all based on how much time you are going to put into it.
So is there a cost attached to this, one-to-one?
Yes.
Is there a cost?
Yes, there is. Yes, I don't do it for free. I figured that. Not yet. I'm working on that. Huh?
Maybe have 2 more minutes. We got to speak.
Yes. If you don't mind, give me your card, or I'll give you mine, or give me your information. We talk because I have 2 other people.
All right.
I apologize. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
You got 3 weeks. Good stuff, right?
A few
We
more
got 30
minutes.
seconds.